Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Auto-transposable music system through all 12 collections of 7 notes, automatically rotatable through all 7 modal perspectives, changing the tonic as we rotate part number 7. So get ready and some coffee because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', and you need Microsoft Excel for that. We are in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because we basically built this from a blank worksheet but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there or just follow along building the part of the table that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below, including a very colorful fretboard tab we may refer to, the example tab, in essence the answer key, the practice tab, having pre-formatted cells so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you do not have any of that, that is okay, because we'll continue to work in the blank tab. Where we started with a blank worksheet, we'll be continuing in essence in the blank part of the worksheet, practicing not only our music skills but our Excel formatting skills as well, for formatting's sake. Let's go on over to the start of this to get a reminder of our overall objective, what we've done thus far, what we're going to be doing here and into the future. We want to be making a system of writing down our musical informations, our tunes, our melodies, our songs, our chords as efficiently as possible in the modern age. Even if we're writing them down by hand, it would be nice if we could automatically transpose them through all 12 collections of 7 notes and possibly even rotate them to all 7 modal positions, changing the tonic as we do so. That should certainly be something available to us with a modern, up-to-date system of a DAW or a MIDI system. So this is the proposal for that as well. So we have our MIDI numbering system, basically an absolute numbering system. And then we have the notes. We have our local numbering system, which is good just for us as musicians. And then we have the note names, the 12 notes. We have the 7 relative positions, which we can call modal perspective, noting that I can look from each of these relative modal perspectives, still seeing 12 notes, but looking at them from that relative position. That's the thing that gives me the dial, meaning if I can imagine this column that's up against the 12 note column like this, I can then change them, or I can move this one up or down. Or if it was in a circle, you can rotate the dial. That's the thing that's going to give us our ability. That's the image that we might have in our mind on how this basically works. It also allows us to then change the perspective that way. 2 dials, one to change the 12 note collection, the second, the perspective, rotating the tonic. Now then we have our chords, remembering that our chords traditionally are represented with a note name and then all of these weird extensions. You could represent them by relative nodal point, one of the 7 nodes that we're building off of, and just name how many notes are in the chord. That then, once again, makes it automatically transposable, even if you're writing your music by hand. You don't have to rewrite your music if you want to play it in C major and then transpose it to D major. Or if you're in D Dorian and you want to go to E Dorian. That should be really easy to do. It should be automatic, basically, if we had a more efficient system. In a DAW system, we should be able to populate it this way, traditionally, or any way we want, because that's generally the argument. We can't do that because musicians that have learned this their entire life, particularly on the piano, need to see it a particular way. Well, you should be able to toggle between all the different ways because they're all connected in today's world with a database, and even more so now that we have AI. We can then map out the chords by points, modal points, and that gives us a specific chord mapping, allowing us to map that onto a MIDI system from a chord perspective instead of having to stack all the notes for each chord every time we want a chord. So then we have our 12 collections of notes mapped out by relative position, 7 notes in the collection, 5 notes outside of the collection, represented by the 0.5s. We then can map then out our actual kind of like our sheet music area, but instead of stacking notes as in normal sheet music or in a DAW type system, we can basically, it would be cleaner to say one row is representing one octave from whatever starting point I'm on. If it's the collection of C major, the lowest note should be C up 12. If I'm starting on D whatever, D Dorian, the lowest note should be D up from 12 in this middle area. That allows us to show one whole range in one row, easily seen because we have a number system, or you could still do it by a note system and be able to map that out and then only go up another row when we want to. That should be able to be done in any of the modes or in any collection of notes, and then we can populate it to a DAW to pop it out to a DAW where we stack all the notes, or vice versa. We should be able to map it out in this format and then condense it down to this format, as I think we're kind of proving here with our test of concept. We should also be able to see it by note in a stacking system, or by relative position, meaning local modal position. Now, I'm looking at this from the perspective of starting at the C collection of notes around the C major, or the Ionian, but we can go into any collection of notes now. I can make this an 11, and now everything transposed to a G perspective of the G now. Up here, everything's still the same up here, but if I was to map it out down here, it's still a little, it's all mapped out, so that looks proper, right? Everything's from the G. We're going to go back to a 4. So that allows us to be able to transpose it, which should be, even your sheet music should be automatically transposable. That's just the most efficient way to write the music, right? Because then you don't have to rewrite it. You can just say which collection of notes you're mapping it out on. The other thing that's a little bit more tricky is what we're doing now to rotate the tonic. So if I have this mapped out here, if this was my song, then I want to rotate the tonic. Now on the chords, it's pretty easy to do because the chords now mapped out this way without a note name, but just a relative position, can just rotate around the 7-note collection. So if this was an Ionian, then I rotate it to the Dorian, which is just one knob up. And if this is the Dorian, then I can rotate it up one knob up if I'm looking at it from the perspective of the whole thing from the Dorian perspective. So I was on the Ionian perspective, so any chord that was Ionian is going to be transferred to the Dorian. If I have a chord from the Ionian perspective, which is a Dorian chord, then I would transpose that up to a Phrygian, and so on and so forth. We had a little bit of a problem for individual notes, however. If you're playing something that's in key, then you have Nashville numbered notes 1 through 7. And those are fine because, once again, I can just transpose those to the next Nashville number up. But if I have one that's outside of the key, represented by a 0.5, that gets a little messy because there's only 5 outside of key, whereas 7 are in the key. So if I have something outside of key and I rotate it 1 up, 1.5 to 2.5, that would be fine. But if I'm on 2.5 and it goes to 3.5, there is no 3.5. That'll give me an error. Therefore, there's going to be 2 areas where I have to fix the problem. On the 1.5 to 2.5 when I go to Dorian, and then the 6.5 that goes to 7.5, and then the 7, which goes to 8, is going to be an octave up, so I'd rather represent it as a 1. So when I transposed this or rotated the tonic to the Dorian, we came up with this. So now we've got all of the chords got adjusted up, no problem. That's great because they're 3-note chords, and we just changed it from like an Ionian chord became a Dorian chord. The third is now a minor third instead of a major third, and that's fine because we snapped it into place. And then, but these became a bit of an issue on these last 2 out here because we have 2 1s because it was a 6.5 to 7.5, which ended up at 8, which we brought back down to 1. And then this one was 7, which would have brought us up to 8, which we brought down to 1. Now note that if I'm playing in Dorian and I'm thinking of data input in Dorian, then the 2, we still have 7 numbers, 1 through 7, but the Dorian is the 2. The Nashville number 2 is the tonic. So that means the 2 I would want in this middle row to be my lowest 2. This 1, pitch-wise, is actually higher in pitch. It's still an Ionian node, but I'm going to imagine when I'm looking at it from the perspective of the Dorian, it should be higher in pitch because the 2 is the tonic. So when we take into account octaves, that becomes kind of an issue. Now, if I so then we rotated from there to the Phrygian. So now we're on the Phrygian. Now, when we rotate to the Phrygian, there's 2 ways you might think of doing that. You might say, hey, look, I've already rotated from Ionian to Dorian. Let's turn the dial 1 more up to Phrygian. But I can't go from here to Phrygian because I've already kind of tweaked it a little bit. We had to tweak, for example, these two over here. So it's already a little out of whack, right? It's a little different. It would be more specific. I think we'll come up with something different if I go back to the original, which is the Ionian up here, and then turn the dial 2 spaces up from here, and then deal with the problem areas when that happens. So in other words, if I rotate 2 up, the chords should be easy still, right? Because I'm going to go from the Ionian, which is Nashville number 1, to the Dorian to the Phrygian. So I just rotate the chords 2 up, and the chords will snap into place, hopefully, although there is an issue with if it's an inverted chord. We'll look at that. And then when I look at the notes then, the ones that are out of key, like a 1.5, is going to go up 2. So 1, 2, 3.5. There is no 3.5. So now the problem is no longer the 2.5 going to the 3.5. It's the 1.5 that's going to go to the 3.5. And then when I get to a 5, it's going to go to 6, 7.5. So once again, there is no 7.5. That's going to go up to 8. And then 8 needs to bring back down to 1 because I want to make that the 1. And then everything up from here is going to go into another octave. So a 6 is going to end up 7, 8. 8 is going to be a 1. The 6.5 is going to be 6, 7, 8.5. So that should actually be 8.5 is closer to 2, right? And then the 7 here is going to be 7, 8, 9. 9 minus 7, once again, should be 2. So all these red ones kind of cause us a problem in some way, shape, or form. So let's go back down here and say, what did we do with that? So we copied this over, and we made the chords work. So the chords were fine because we could just rotate that one up, and we just changed the offset so that mapped out. But then we left off with this problem over here where these 3 were out. Now, one reason they're out, if I double click on this, I realized that I just messed up this 1 bit right here. See this? I changed all of these to seeing that cell +2 because we're rotating from 1 to 2, but I didn't change it on this one. So that should solve our problem to some degree. So I'm going to say boom, and then if I copy that across, that becomes a 1, and then a 1.5 and a 2. Now, I think that actually works. That's what we want, right? Because this one up here was the 5.5 would be 6.5 or 7. Let's see if I can highlight the one I'm on here because it gets a little hard to, yeah, 6.5, 5.5, 6, 7.5. This one's going to 7.5. That's a problem, right? Because there is no 7.5. That's a problem. But this one, 6 goes to 7, 8, which goes back down to 1. So this goes to 1, and this goes to 1.5. There is a 1.5, so that's legit. And then this one goes to 2, and there is a 2, and that's legit. Okay, so why didn't it do this one goes to 7.5? I thought I had one where if it goes to 7. So if that plus 2 is 6.5, do that. So we said if that plus 2 is 2.5, then, now wait a second. If that plus 2 is 2.5, this should be 3.5. That's where we find the problem. right? Because here's a 3.5 right there. So something went wrong. This was correct up top. Let me just double check. So yeah, because up here, if this plus that is 3.5, so I think I messed up. I was tired. So let me fix that. So I'm going to go into here and say, if this plus 2 is not 2.5, 3.5 is the problem. If it's 3.5, make it 4. If that plus 2 is not 6.5, but 7.5. If it's 7.5, make it a 1. Otherwise, if that plus 2 is less than 8, then do that plus 2. If not, do that plus 2 minus 7. I think that will work. And then here's the left bit. All right, so let's go okay, and then I'll copy that across. And see these last few, if they fix it. That's a 7, that's a 1's legit, 1's legit, 1.5's legit, 2's legit. All right, so when I'm in the Phrygian mode, then the 3 is actually the lowest note in the Phrygian node, and then the 1, 1.5, and 2 should be actually lower in pitch, because now I'm looking at it, the bass note is the 3, and traditionally we're going to go up 12. I'm sorry, these are going to be higher in pitch, and traditionally we go up from the 3. So the 3 should be the base of this column. All right, now we had another issue over here. Now note that I'm over here, I'm redoing my thing. Now you might say, like, if you were in a database program, instead of, I might just copy down the same numbers and then everything would be pushed up. Meaning, if I used this same one here, everything got pushed up to this column. That's another way that you can see it, which might be clearer in some ways on a database, but then I'd have to recolor everything to the red. So what I'm doing is shifting the column down so that the colors are the same, but you can see all that's happening is everything is shifting up to here, right, as we move it up, and then it's looking from the perspective of this as we snap it into place. So if I go back down, we're going to say this is an E that we're picking up from here. That's defining what we're on. That makes sense. And then this, we pulled this in as 64. We looked that up at the MIDI number. And then this, we looked up as well for the relative position. I think that works. And then, this we looked up. That's the local number for an E, which is 4. Is that right? No, something is wrong with this. Where is this going? This is looking up here. No, something is wrong with that, right? This should be equal to the local number, should be X lookup tab of that E, comma, and then I want to look that up in our local numbers 1 through 12. So you can look that up over here. Right there, 1 through 12, and then comma from that. So find that E. Wait, I'm looking it up the other way around. I want you to find the E over here, and then comma, return the number, which should be an 8. All right, that's one way I can do that. I could have also just said the 8 is equal to, let's do it, this might be an easier way to see it. The 8 is just going to be that 8 right there. And then I can just go up from there. This is the local distance. So, right. So if that, so then that goes up from there, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then it should go down from there. So this should be equals if tab, this minus 1 is greater than 0, then do this minus 1. If not, do this minus 1 plus 12. So, should be this if that minus 1 is less than 0, is greater than 0. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to copy that, paste that down, paste formulas only. Okay, I think that's right. All right. And then this one needs to be the relative position. The relative position. So this is an E, which is 8 is an E, and an E is relative position 3. Where am I pulling that from? Where is this pulling from? Just out of curiosity. Okay, from that E up there. I think it'd be better if I had it over here. This is I could just type it in here and just say this is 3, because like this is Nashville number 1, and then this would be equal to Nashville number 1 plus 2, or 1 plus 1, and this would be 2, and this would be Nashville number 2 plus 1, which is going to be 3. Okay, and then over here, that means that my root point here can start at that 3. Boom. And then it goes up from there. So I'll just count it out. It goes 3, 4, 4, and then 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, and then 8, and then, now wait a sec, this is the one that keeps going up. So let's undo that 8. So on this side, this once again equals that 3. And then it goes 3, 4. I'm going to hard code these. 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7. Now, which one of these were the local? And it's 7. And then this is going to go from 3 to 2.5 to 1.51. Okay, so then on the 8 here, this is going to be equal to this 1. It's going to be equal to that 1, and then it starts over. So I'm going to copy that and then paste it up here. That's the local Nashville numbers, formulas only. And then this one goes to, this one starts at 7, and this is picking up that 7 and copying it down. So I think that's right. And then this is going to be the same as these in the middle section from here to here. Well, let's go from here to here, and then I copy it down from here down to here where the 1 is. So same for the middle section, and then when I get to the 8, I'm going to say this is going to be equal to this 1 plus 7. And that'll give me the 8, and then I can copy that up. Copy that up to give my, and then right click in formulas only. And then down here, it goes from 1, and then I'm going to say this now equals 7 minus 7. So it goes to 0, and I can copy that down. And I think that's right. Hopefully. Paste. Okay. Okay. All right. So that makes perfect sense. All right, so now we have our columns. So now over here, what happened with this? So where's this coming from? To transpose this to the MIDI, it's looking there. And so it's looking at the Dorian. So I need to pull the Dorians down. That's the first thing I need to do. The Dorians need to be pulled down. Now, should I just do it this way again? It'd be easier if I said the BL 88s need to be changed to this one, BL 148. So let's do that a little bit easier this way, this time. So here's the BL 88. Those all need to be changed. So I'm going to copy that, enter, and then I'm going to go here and I'm holding down Control there, and then I'm going to go to find and replace. Find that BL 88 and replace it with BL, what did I say it was? BL 149. 149. Replace all. Boom. I think it did it. Close it. Alright, that looks more right. So let's copy that and paste it across this whole thing and see what happens when we do that. Alright, paste it. Alright, that looks better. So this is not a problem. This is not a problem. This is not a problem. What's the deal with this though? That D. Is that D? Why is that happening? Because this 62 is a 62. What did I want it to be? It's because that's an octave lower. But this one's not. This one moved up to a 73. So I did XLOOKUP that. See, but this is pulling from the table up top. So I need to fix that too. So, okay. So we have to pull that table down. So I'm going to double click on here and say this is looking at the red range here. But no, the range has changed. The middle range is now down here. So we want this range. Do that. And then it'll work. Or it'll work more better at least. Do that range. Boom. Alright, and then we'll copy that across. See if that helps us out a bit. So that we're at 74. That looks more right. Alright, that looks cool. So that solved that problem, I think. Bam. But we still have this problem. Let's make that red. Now that's coming from a chord, I believe. So this, we have this chord that's starting on the D. This chord, bam, that's the problem. And that's because if I look at that chord in my, let's make these all orange now. We fixed these problems. That's been fixed. All right. If I look at these, it's pulling over here that it's pulling, not that one. It's pulling these twos over for the Dorian chord. But the twos are now a problem because it needs to be an octave up because the Dorian, I'm on the Phrygian, therefore the Dorian chord needs to start an octave up. So I need to make all these twos 2 plus 7, which would be a 9. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this over again. I was going to say insert cells, insert, make these larger, and we'll just copy these, copy. I'll copy the skinny this time too, so that when I paste it, I don't have to redo the skinny. Paste. Okay, so we already fixed the yellows up top, but the Dorian which is the 2s, these need to be fixed. Let's make all these yellow too, because these are the ones I'm adjusting as we pivot through our table. I'll make that this color, and then this is just going to be 2 equals 2 plus 7. So it's now a 9, right? So now it's a 9. And then that should work. So now I just pull that into my formulae, and it should all function properly. So I'm just going to double click on this and say, okay, where's this coming from? See, these are pulling in from this table. It's like, no, that's the Dorian table. You need to be in the Phrygian table, which is over here, because I had to fix that other one. And so this is kind of tedious, but I feel like a modern database program, a modern DAW, is capable of doing this. I mean, if I could do this, then somebody should be able to, I mean, do this on a database, and it would be so much better, I feel like, particularly for people that don't know this stuff. I'm going to paste this down because then they can just tweak, everything, they can tinker. You can tinker with it. Okay. See now, so boom, fixed it, I think. Bam. All right. Another one bites the dust. I don't like to bite dust. It's all gritty and it's all gritty. Okay. Why are these way up here? This one got pushed up way the heck up there. That seems odd, does it not? Because we started in, yeah, that's just a really long chord, but this one started way up there. I would have thought that one would start right here. Okay. Okay. Okay, the heck paso. 84? What are you talking about, Willis? Alright, I think I fixed this one. That's the one we fixed last time. But now it looks funny. What are you talking about, Willis? Alright. I'm trying to... let's see. So this should be pulling from here. Okay. And so for these one, okay, I see. These just copied over wrong. This should still just be the 8 right there. Then it's fine. Okay. What are you talking about, Willis? All right, there we go. All right, I think that's fine. Okay. So then, so next time I'll see if I can do this more smoothly. We'll copy them down to the next one, which will be the 4, which is a Lydian, and then again we'll map that out to the top one. Hopefully I got it a little bit cleaner so I can copy it down, and then once we do all of them, we'll go back and fix this bit, which puts into the notes. Okay. Okay.